Good day, this is your Sir Erwin Morborn, and this is our alternative learning material 3 in creative writing.
Our third topic in our subject is all about another important element of creative writing. In the English language, we have different forms of comparison, and comparison is important in creating or forming vivid images in our mind based on what we are reading or writing. Later on, we will try to envelop what is analogy and what is its difference from other forms of comparison in the English language. First, let's have our passage. This passage contains analogy or comparison between two things, which tries to explain a certain scenario. So here it goes. Getting up early to go to class is like taking a bitter pill. You find ways and reasons not to do it or not to do it just yet. You struggle against yourself, but finally you get up because you need it to. Just like swallowing a pill. You close your eyes and before you take it. Like you close your eyes before you open the door of your classroom. Ultimately, you do it because it is good for you. Pills will make you better just as attending to your classes will do too. And at the end of the day, you're just glad you did it. You see, in the passage, getting up early for class is compared to taking a bitter pill. The writer have employed comparisons to show similarities between two different entities. So the writer of this passage would like to tell us the similarities between getting up early for class or getting up early to attend your online classes and to take a bitter pill. So how are they similar to each other? So first things first, we find it difficult to get up very early in the morning to attend our online classes. We create reasons, maybe because we are still tired or we still wanted to lay on our bed, or we're just getting bored attending our classes. So those are some of the reasons that we usually have every time we try to avoid getting up early to attend our classes. Just like swallowing a bitter pill. So we don't want to swallow it because it's bitter, it's malangsa, or it has a foul odor, or it could be that it's something big that you are having or you are struggling swallowing it. So those are some of the reasons. Just like getting up early for school, we have several reasons why we don't want to take a bitter pill. We struggle, okay? So there's struggle among the two or between the two, but we don't have a choice but to get up to attend our classes. We don't have a choice despite of our distaste of that pill, but we need to swallow it. All right? We need to attend our class. At the same time, we need to swallow a bitter pill. We do it because it is good for us. Swallowing a bitter pill will make us feel better if ever we are having an illness or we are sick, just like attending to our classes. So we do it because it is good for us. Attending our classes would mean that we are about to learn something, and that something could change your life, that could make you feel better, that could add up to your knowledge. All right? It will make us feel better, just like swallowing a pill. So for example, you are having a fever or you are having a cough, you are cold, so you just have to take a pill or any medicine to make yourself feel better. So that's the comparison between getting up early for school or to attend online classes and swallowing a better pill. The writer of the passage employed analogy or comparison to show similarities or to highlight the similarities between two different concepts. Now, as I have said, our passage contains analogy. Now, you might be wondering what an analogy is. What does it do? What is its purpose when we are writing? So, analogy, this is an extended comparison between two things. Take note of the word extended. When we say extended, it is expected to be something comprehensive. When we say comprehensive, it is lengthened. When we say lengthened, it's something long. The writer is emphasizing similarities between two things using several words. In the English language, we have different forms of comparisons. We have the degree of comparison in adjective such as strong, stronger, and strongest. That's a form of comparison. Whereas in the figure of speech, another form of literary device, we have the similes and metaphors. So similes and metaphors also show comparison between two things or two different things. But the difference of analogy is that analogy could be longer than those basic forms of comparison. When we say simile, you can create a comparison in just one sentence. Same with metaphor, but in analogy, we try to extend the comparison. Let's say in simile we have she is like the sun. You compared she, which is your subject, to the sun. That is simile. Now, your readers might be wondering, how is she compared to the sun? What is the similarity between them? So, analogy tries to explain or emphasize the similarities between two things. So it's not enough to say she is like the sun. So you need to explain that. And when you explain that, when you pinpoint the similarities between she and the sun, you are now trying to write or form an analogy. Okay? She is like the sun because she gives me energy every time I am around her. She is like the sun because she lights up my world. She is like the sun because she lets me see things clearly. Now your simple simile became extended. And that extension is called analogy. You now have your analogy when you try to extend or you try to emphasize the similarity of this thing to another thing. That is your analogy, okay? Extended comparison between two things. Another definition of analogy is that sometimes the thing being compared are quite similar, but other times they could be very different. So when we say quite similar, it could be a person to another person. And when we say very different, it could be a person to an object. Quite similar, meaning living things to another living things or an object to another object. But when we say very different comparison, it could be living things to non-living things or non-living things to living things. Alright? We have here an example. My mother is like the character I saw from a movie. They share common personality and they both have the same depth of love to their children. This is a form of comparison or analogy wherein the subjects or the things being compared here are quite similar. Why similar? Because the actual mother is compared to a person in a movie or a person in a fictitious creation or product. How are they similar? So according here, they share both common personalities and they have the same depth of love to their children. So almost the same ang ilang personality and at the same time their love to their children. That is why they are similar. That is why this is an example of analogy wherein two quite similar things are being compared. Now let's proceed to the second example. My mother is like a candle who consumes herself just to light our way. She is melting herself to give us light. She paints herself to make us see. So our second example is the comparison between the actual mother and an object. That is why this is an analogy comparing two different objects or concepts. So the actual mother is compared to the candle. Now, how are they similar with each other? So as we all know, our mother will make everything for us. So just like a candle. So according here, our mother consumes herself just like the candle. How does she consumes herself? So she consumes herself in a way that she sacrificing without minding herself, but he always does thing that would benefit her children even though she has less to give, something like that. So she is melting herself to give us life. So she is sacrificing herself to give us light, to make us see. She paints herself to make us see. It means that she is willing to accept or to absorb any pain just to give us the love and protection that we need. That is why mother is compared to a candle, and that is an example of analogy where two concepts or two different concepts are compared to each other. In this case, the actual mother is compared to an object which is the candle. Alright, so that is analogy. Another definition of analogy is that writers often use analogies in order to make vivid descriptions. When we say vivid and Goliath, joke lang. So when we say vivid, it means detailed or clear. Alright, so vivid description. If our analogy gives us vivid description, our analogy also gives us a vivid description or should also give us a vivid description. Now, how does analogy gives us a vivid description? So we have here an example. First one, my room is a mess. My room is a mess. Is there any analogy there? Of course, there is no analogy in this example. Why? Because nothing is compared here. Alright? The room is just being described as something mess. But can you picture out how messy it is? Is there a degree or level of messiness described or emphasized in this example? There's none. Alright? Wala na mention kung gaano kaukay ang kwarto. But ginhambal lang messy maukay. So kay kita ya, we have different perspective or perceptions about maukay. It could be nga nagakalat lang ang ulumugan, or it could be nga wala mo lang nahimos ang imong higdaan, or it could be nga nagkalatumba lang ang mga books nimo sa imong bookshelf, wala nakabutang sa insakto nga butangan ni mga sapatos or kung ano man da, or it could be the combination of all. So we don't know, kaya wala diri na emphasize. So therefore this is not an analogy, this is an example wherein the description is not vivid, it's not clear, it's not detailed. Now we will see if how analogy could create a vivid description out of this plain and direct sentence. We have here, my room is inches away from being a devastation of a strongest typhoon. Now, this is a sentence nga based sa first sentence natin, but this one is more detailed, this one is more creative. So, paano siya naging creative? Because there is an element of analogy na. Okay, now, where is the analogy there? Ano ang gina-compare diri sa ila? What is being compared here is the room and being a devastation of a strongest typhoon. How so? Or, how can we say this kind of analogy creates a vivid description? So when we say strongest typhoon, of course it would refer to, or it could refer to Yolanda, and we all know the devastation, the effects, or the catastrophic effect of the typhoon way back in 2013, and I know that we have witnessed that. So magwa kita sa aton mga panimalay, nagatumbang mga kahoy, ang mga dahon nagkakalalit sa kalsada, hindi na magyan ang kalsada, and ang mga atop nato naglaapok, nagkalalusod ang aton mga balay, insulod sa mga tubig and everything. So tamaan ka messy, tamaan ka ukay. We don't know where to start in order to arrange everything, to make everything in order. So now, that kind of picture or that kind of devastation because of the strongest typhoon or made by the strongest typhoon is compared to how messy is the room of the speaker in this sentence. Alright, now that is a vivid description. Now that is analogy creating a vivid description. My room is inches away from being a devastation of a strongest typhoon. It means that it is close to become a devastation of a strongest typhoon. Inches away. Alright? We could only imagine how messy the room is. Right? We have here in Hiligaynon, kakalhit sang akon nga kwarto. So this is another sentence without a vivid description. So again, describe niya lang nga makalhit ang iyang kwarto. Now, if you are writing that sentence, your reader might ask, gaano kakalhit? Alright? So, daw kaangay sang binagyuhan sang pinakamabaskog nga hangin ang akon kwarto. Now this sentence is based on our first one. So it's more extended. It is more detailed. Okay? Again, describe niya paagi sa pag-compare sang kaukay sa pinakamabaskog nga hangin, sa binagyuhan sa pinakamabaskog nga hangin. Now that is a vivid description. Now that is a detailed description of a certain image or scenario. Okay? Another definition of analogy is that we use this because sometimes the emotions are too direct or too painful. Always remember, in creative writing, we need to avoid boring statements. We need to avoid plain sentences, very dull nga mga descriptions. Okay? So we need to be creative because this is creative writing. We need to put depth on what we are writing. Okay? We need to avoid the mga plain and too direct. Example, I am so sad today. Wow, sad ka. How so? Gaano ka kasad? Your readers will be wondering or will be puzzled on how sad you are because hindi siya extended, because hindi siya or wala siya na-explain well. So, kayuhon nato ng sentence gamit ang analogy. Today, I feel like the cloud with heaviness inside. Now, this is an extended sentence of the first example. And there is an analogy there. So where is the analogy there? So you are comparing yourself to a cloud with heaviness inside. Okay, always remember that cloud in literature or creative writing is always correlated to sadness or strong emotions. So today I feel like the cloud with heaviness inside. You can feel that the character or the speaker in the sentence is struggling, is going through something. And that something is not positive. Okay, because there's heaviness inside, there's burden inside. So you would conclude, you would assume that she is sad. Okay? Alright. Another example, nalipay ako tungod sa balita. Boring. Ka-straight. Sobra ka direct nga sentence. Kay una ton, baw, daw gindala ako sa kalangitan sang balita nga ato. Now, this is a more exciting sentence. This is extended. This has some images. This has analogy. Daw gindala ikaw sa kalangitan sang balita nga ato. So, ang imo nga emotion, ang imo nga feeling, which is nalipay, is compared nga daw gindala ikaw sa langit. So, do you know the feeling nga ginadala ikaw sa langit? Balaan ko na. You know the experience na ginadala sa langit. So it's like the highest form of happiness. And this kind of highest form of happiness, it could be found in a different aspect or experiences nga naagyan naton. So sari-sari atong definition sang sina nga notion nga dugindala ikaw sa langit. Okay? So, dugindala siya sa langit again is the highest form of happiness, and it is compared sa iyang emotion when he knew that kind of news. Alright? Next, another definition of analogy. Again, this is similar to similes and metaphors, but they are not the same. So, similes and your metaphors can exist only with one sentence, but your analogy, it can also exist, but it needs to be extended. You need to pinpoint the similarities. You need to emphasize how different concepts you are trying to compare are similar with each other. So that's analogy, and it's pretty different from similes and metaphors. So later on, we will be talking about similes and metaphors. We have different discussion for that, and yeah, these are also important literary devices that we need to use in creative writing. Now I have here an example of a poetry which has an analogy. Alright, so now let me read to you the poetry. Planets and Galaxies by Shut Eye 2018. So this is written exclusive for this topic. We will know later on kung di indira ang mga analogy. Okay? So let me start. Imagine this parchment on which these verses are crafted like the space above. Look at these words. as either planets or meteors floating on void. Look at yourself as an astronaut, a time traveler of soul and mind. From the abode of your imagination's spaceship, what do you see? A meteorite? A black hole? From a lost universe? An undirected star? A swaying moon frolicking in the sphere of existence? You ponder, where is the line that connects each dot? You wonder, must I jump from this planet to another? Emotions after emotions? Or must I move from one galaxy to another? Idea after idea. Now that is planets and galaxies. Okay, so the writer or the poet left you a question. So this is a philosophical poetry or poem which tries to make you introspect about life, about what you wanted in your life. And as you have noticed, there are astronomical objects in this poetry. Everything is compared to astronomical objects, and we will specify those things. First, on our first stanza, of course, so the things being compared there is parchment and parchment and the space above. Okay, imagine this parchment on which these verses are crafted like the space above. So when we say parchment, these are some writing materials, but in the contemporary world, they are called bond paper, yellow pad, or any forms of paper. Okay? Or we could also say that since we are very technological dependent people or generation, so wala na kita usually nagasulat sa papel, but we are typing sa ating laptop, sa ating cell phones. So parchment, they are also forms of parchments, and they are compared to the space above. So nga man gina-compare sila sa space above. Second stanza, look at these words as either planets or meteors floating on the void. Now the things being compared here are your words, and they are compared to planets and meteors. So what does it mean? So when we say planets, these are stationary, no? Wala na sila yaga lupad sa space, or wala sila naga-travel nga paikis, but circular, naga-revolve lang sila around sun. So we could say that they are stationary, they are calm, and they are gentle. Whereas meteors, so these are I think considered rocks on the space, nga float, but when they are affected by a strong energy, so pwede nga magalupad sila or apukon, something like that. So kung sa aton magsulod sa atmosphere sang air, they are called meteorite. Okay, they are moving. Okay, so we cannot predict kung din sila kadto, something like that. Now our words are compared to them. What does it mean? So kung padalman natin, we can simply say that there are words which are effective and there are words which are not. Okay? When we say words as planet, meaning to say stationary lang, stationary siya, wala siya gahulag masyado, or hindi obvious ang iya paghulag, meaning to say they are not effective. But when we say words as meteors, so they are this kind of words nga very unpredictable but may effects sa atan. Kaya nagahulag siya, nagamove siya. It could affect us negatively or positively. That is why words are compared to them. Okay? Two forms of words, planets or meteors. Next stanza, look at yourself as an astronaut, a time traveler of soul and mind. So yourself as a writer, yourself as someone who has the authority on what to write or on what to say. Okay, so you are like an astronaut, according here, a time traveler of soul and mind. What does it mean? So as a writer, of course, we are, or you are compared to being a time traveler. How? Because it could be, or it might be nga ang ginsulat mo hindi will be useful in the future. Kung hindi siya maging useful today, it may be maging useful siya sa future. Pares ang kay Shakespeare, ang mga classic writers or poets naton. Wala na sila yakabalo ang ilang mga inobrahan will become classic, will become canonized forms of literatures. When we say canonize, inang mga ginastadihan, ginagamit sa academe. Okay? And we might not know, maybe isa sa aton diri, or isa sa inyo, will become a great writer, no? Kung ang sinulatan mo yunda, magiging useful siya for future generation. That is why time traveler, because ang ginyanda mo ginsulat, mapuslan in the future. So nag-time travel ang imo sinulatan. Okay? So you are like an astronaut, a time traveler of soul and mind. Next stanza, from the abode of your imagination spaceship, what do you see? So ano imo nakikita? So abode, imagination spaceship. So ano din ang gina-compare, ano ginamindera. So when we say imagination spaceship, this refers to our mind. This refers to our head. Because ara dira aton brain, ara dira nakastore ang mga imaginations naton. Da nagastore ang cognitive capacity naton. Da halin ang aton mga ginasulatan because of our imagination. Because we try to view the world in a creative way. Kang nagaroot ina or naghalin ina sa aton nga mind, imagination's spaceship. Okay? Now the poet or the writer asks you from your mind, what do you see? A meteorite, a black hole, from a lost universe, and many other questions there. So philosophical questions. So it tries to make you introspect about life and what you wanted in your life. So that is planets and galaxies, and this kind of poetry is an example of a poetry nga may analogy. That's just an example. Alright, so I believe that's all for our third lesson, which is analogy. I hope everything's clear. Again, analogy is an extended comparison between two things. So these things could be quite similar, or it could also be quite different. Also, analogy creates or should give us a vivid description about what we are trying to describe. We also use analogy in order to avoid plain and too direct na mga statements. If you have questions, if you have something nga hindi maintindihan, you may message me anytime about this lesson. Okay, so thank you so much. Again, God bless everyone. I hope na learn, I hope na gets, I hope na feel ninyo ang lesson. Good luck and see you.
Well, here's to the hearts that you're gonna break. Here's to the lives that you're gonna change. Here's to the infinite possible ways to love you. I want you to have it. Here's to the good times we're gonna have. You don't need money, got a free pass. Here's to the fact that I'll be sad without you. I want you to have it all.